Yeah, okay. So those who are going to watch this now will be missing the first 20 minutes. I apologize. Rabbi Yossi says that Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, there are three kinds of prohibited wines. It is prohibited to derive benefit from wine used from a libation, and the wine imparts severe ritual impurity when it has the volume of an olive bulk. Just 1 second here. This is wine used for a libation is called yain nesech. Nesech is a libation, yain, wine of libation. So that is one reason why non-kosher supervised wine for some is considered not kosher, because there's a fear that the non-kosher producer, the non-Jew who produced that wine, might have made a libation for it. So in today's world, this is really mostly not an issue. Okay, so the issue of libation is mostly not an issue today. In rare cases for European wines, there are some European wines made in some small villages in France or Germany that might ask the local priest to come and bless the first product of that year's wine. So that could be considered this wine for libation. But even that, you could argue, he's a priest. Christianity is not paganism. And so the libation, what you're worried about is a libation to an idol, not a libation to God, because you can argue that Christianity believes in the same God that we do, just with three parts to it. But still, it might not be considered libation. So in the non-Orthodox world, non-kosher wine is not an issue related to this. There are other ingredients added to wine that could be an issue. Like it used to be a long time ago that some red wines would have been clarified with ox blood. That really was a thing. It's not a thing anymore. So clearly, if it had ox blood in it, there would be a different issue, not the libation. It would be a kashrut issue, just in terms of what you're allowed to consume, not consume. And so ox blood from non-kosher slaughtered animal would be not kosher to consume. So wine for libation is not an issue. Where it could be an issue, actually, so I don't know about rice wine, right, imported from Japan. So I don't know if rice wine, those Japanese producers, whether they make a libation to their gods. And it could be argued that Eastern religions, Shinto, Buddhism, Hinduism, maybe not Buddhism, but definitely Hinduism. So like wine from India, I don't know if that's a thing. Wine from China, could be a thing. I don't know if you can buy China.
I've never heard of Chinese wine.
I never heard Chinese. You can buy Chinese everything else, but I don't know about Chinese wine. But Japanese, definitely Japanese rice wine. So Shinto and Hindu are definitely, could be argued that they're pagan because there are multiple gods. So then there would be a question. You can buy kosher certified rice wine. I know that Shalom's does sell it. So that would be a problem with libation. Wine imparts severe ritual impurity when it has the volume of an olive bulk. So let's just look at the halacha there for the... Yes, wine used for a libation imparts ritual impurity to people and vessels through physical contact and to earthenware through its airspace. Additionally, it transmits impurity to one who carries it, like an unslaughtered animal carcass. This halacha is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis mentioned in the tractate Chulin, who dispute the ruling of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. So in other words, not only is it treif, but it makes you ritually impure if you come into contact with it. So that the rabbis added that extra category to it to make sure that people are staying away from it. So the idea of ritual impurity is really not an issue that can be solved today. So issues of ritual purity, because the temple isn't standing anymore, you can't resolve. You can only resolve ritual impurity through bringing a sacrifice. Besides going to the mikveh, you have to bring a sacrifice. And so since you can't bring the sacrifice anymore, these issues with liquids and foods and other things imparting ritual impurity are not an issue. But in the time of the rabbis, when the temple was standing, that would then help people understand, I'll stay away from this because I don't want to get involved in the whole difficult process of becoming ritually pure. Then it is prohibited to derive benefit from nondescript wine of a Gentile, and the wine imparts the ritual impurity of liquids. So there is this category. So there's yain nesech, that's wine that you know was used for a libation. Then what about stam yainam? So stam, that's just regular wine that belongs to them. It's translated here as nondescript wine of a Gentile. So that is wine that wasn't used for a libation, but it's still produced by a Gentile. So the rabbis are saying you're not allowed to drink Gentile wine, and the wine imparts the ritual impurity of liquids when it has the volume of 1/4 of a log. So a quarter of a log, there will be a note here. Unlike wine used for a libation, nondescript wine belonging to Gentiles is similar to any other liquid with regard to ritual impurity. In other words, 1/4 of a log of this wine is susceptible to ritual impurity and imparts impurity to other foods and liquids only if it comes into contact with a creeping animal. Others maintain the sages decreed that wine belonging to a Gentile always imparts ritual impurity, even if it does not come into contact with a creeping animal. According to this interpretation, the mention of 1/4 of a log is a leniency. The sages applied this decree only to quantities of wine equal to or greater than 1/4 of a log. So 1/4 of a log is a decent amount. It's like a cup. And if you have less than a cup, then you don't have to worry about it in terms of imparting impurity, but you still have to worry about it in that it's not kosher. So there's also this explanation halachically of stam yenam, nondescript wine. This refers to wine of Gentiles in circumstances where it's unknown whether it was used as a libation for idolatry. Deriving benefit from such wine is prohibited by rabbinic law. One who drinks 1/4 of a log of this wine receives lashes for rebelliousness, as is the case with regard to all prohibited liquids, despite the fact that any amount of them is prohibited. So this isn't just any Gentile wine. It's wine where you're not sure if it was used for libation or not.
So often we use grape juice here. Is there any discussion? I mean, in the Orthodox channels, is grape juice a suitable alternative? Or
yes.
Is this a thing we just do here?
No. Grape juice is definitely, you say Berei Pri Hagafen on it, and on bottles of kosher grape juice, it'll say in Hebrew what the blessing is, and it says Berei Pri Hagafen.
But it's a perfect substitute.
It's a perfect substitute for wine, and you can fulfill the commandment of drinking 4 cups of wine at your Seder with grape juice. It's not a problem at all. Because wine in the time of the rabbis, the alcohol content was pretty low because it was diluted.
Right.
So that's why medieval rabbis, in talking about grape juice, would say, well, it's almost the same.
Right.
Grape juice is almost the same as the wine that they were talking about. With regard to the wine of one who deposits his wine with a Gentile, one is prohibited from drinking it, but one is permitted to derive benefit from it. So in other words, if you store your wine, Jewish wine, with a Gentile, then you're not allowed to drink that wine because you don't know what the Gentile might have done to it. The Gentile might have blessed the wine, might have poured some out as a libation, but you're allowed to make money off of it. You can sell it to somebody else, but you're not allowed to drink it. Um, and then the halacha on this says, wine deposited with a Gentile that is sealed with only a single seal may not be consumed, but benefit may derive from it. This leniency applies if the Gentile designated a space for it that was accessible only to a Jew, in accordance with the Gemara's explanation of the Baraita. So it depends on how it was stored and how it was sealed. Okay, so we go on. The Gemara raises a difficulty, but didn't we learn in a Mishnah, with regard to one who deposits his produce with a Gentile, it has the status of the produce of a Gentile with regard to the halacha of sabbatical year and with regard to tithe, as a Gentile might have exchanged the Jew's produce with untithed produce or produce of the sabbatical year. According to this logic, wine deposited with a Gentile should be entirely prohibited due to the concern that the Gentile exchange it with his own. So in other words, there are these other categories of agriculture laws that are required to do again in the time of the temple. The sabbatical year, every seventh year, you're not allowed to farm your land and collect the produce. You're supposed to let it lie fallow. And also, every year, you're supposed to take a tithe of your produce to set it aside. So if you're storing your produce with a Gentile, then you don't know what the Gentile actually might have done with your produce. Let's say you're putting your cucumbers, or you're putting your grain in a Gentile storehouse with lots of other grain. They'll weigh the grain to know how much is yours, but it doesn't matter. Grain is grain if you're storing it in this big silo, but you don't know then what would have happened to your specific grain that you harvested and put in that silo. You never will see your own exact grain again. So when it gets mixed in a Gentile storehouse, then you're not allowed to, it has the status of produce of a Gentile for sabbatical year and tithe. So then and therefore wine should be in the same category, because it could be mixed in with Gentile wine. It should be prohibited altogether. The Gemara answers, it's permitted for one to derive benefit from the wine in a case where the Gentile designated a corner for the Jew's wine. That is, if the wine was locked away in a specific place to which only a Jew has access. So in this Gentile wine warehouse, there's a separate section for Jews. And in that case, then it's okay. Still, you shouldn't consume that wine, but you're allowed to sell it. The Gemara questions this. If that is so, drinking from the wine should also be permitted, because it's stored, it's kept in a separate section. Right? You shouldn't have to worry then that the Gentile's touching it at all. As Rabbi Yochanan once happened to come to Parod, where the deceased Tana Bar Kapara had lived. When he arrived, he said, "Is there any Mishnah of Bar Kapara here?" In response, Rabbi Tanchum of Parod taught him the following Baraita citing Bar Kapara. With regard to one who deposits his wine with a Gentile, drinking from the wine is permitted. All right, so he wanted to know if there was some teaching that was left over from the rabbi who had died. And this is the teaching of Bar Kapara that's still around, that you can drink the wine that has been deposited with a Gentile. Upon hearing this, Rabbi Yochanan read the following verse about him: where the tree falls, there it shall be. Does it enter your mind that this means that the tree itself will be there? It's obvious that a fallen tree lands where it falls. Rather, the verse is saying, there its fruits shall be. The verse is a metaphor for a sage, and its fruits represent his disciples. Rabbi Yochanan was intimating that although Bar Kapara may have died, Rabbi Tanchum, his disciple, perpetuates his wisdom. In any event, it's apparent from the Braita quoted by Rabbi Tanchum that there is a case in which it is permitted to drink wine deposited with a Gentile. This contradicts the statement of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. Rabbi Zera said that's not difficult, right? So why is there one rabbi who says you can drink wine that is stored with a Gentile, and rabbis who say that you can't? Rabbi Zera said it's not difficult. This baraita, which permits drinking wine deposited with a Gentile, is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, whereas that statement of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis. Rabbi Zera elaborates, as it's taught in a baraita. With regard to both one who purchases or one who rents a house located in a Gentile's courtyard, and they filled the house with containers of wine, and the key to the house or a seal is in the possession of a Jew, so that the Gentile cannot access the wine, in which case it is even more secure than when a corner is designated for the Jew's wine. Rabbi Eliezer permits the wine and the rabbis prohibit it. So you have a Jew who is the custodian of the Gentile warehouse. Then there's a rabbi who says in that case, so not just that there's a separate storage area, but the Jew is the only one who has access to it. Then a rabbi says you can drink that wine, but the rabbis, the majority opinion, still prohibits it. Rabbi Chia, son of Rabbi Chia bar Nachmani, says that Rav Chisda says that Rav says. And some say that Rav Chisda says that Ze'eri says. And some say that Rav Chisda says. Abba bar Chama said to me that this is what Ze'eri said. The halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. So in other words, this rabbi says all the rabbis agree with Rabbi Eliezer. There shouldn't be a disagreement. All the rabbis agree with Rabbi Eliezer in that case of a Jewish custodian having the only access to the wine that's stored in a Gentile warehouse. And Rabbi Elazar says, all substances are sufficiently secured by one seal except wine, which is not sufficiently secured by one seal. And Rabbi Yochanan says, even wine is secured by one seal. And they do not disagree in their reasoning. Rather, this opinion, Rabbi Yochanan, is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, and that opinion of Rabbi Elazar is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis. There are those who say that Rabbi Elazar says, all substances are secured by a seal within a seal, that is, two seals, except wine, which is not secured by a seal within a seal. And Rabbi Yochanan says, even wine is secured by a seal within a seal. And both hold in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis. One sage, Rabbi Yochanan, holds that when the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Eliezer, it's with regard to one seal. But in the case of a seal within a seal, they concede that there is no concern that the Gentile might have opened it, and therefore they permit the wine. And one sage, Rabbi Elazar, holds that they prohibited even wine that was secured by a seal within a seal. So there are a lot of rabbis who say even double-sealed wine, where the likelihood of opening it in a stealth way and then being able to reseal it again is so low that it's okay for some to consume that wine that was double sealed, but there are still rabbis who say even double sealed wine kept with Gentiles is prohibited. So now they're asking, what does that kind of seal look like? The Gemara asks, what's a seal within a seal like? Rava says a basin placed over the mouth of a barrel that is smeared with clay and stamped with a seal is considered a seal within a seal. And if not, it's not considered a seal within a seal. If a basket is placed over a barrel and is fastened to it, this is a seal within a seal. If it is not fastened to the barrel, it's not a seal within a seal. With regard to a wineskin that is placed in a sack, if the wineskin stopper is facing downward, this is a seal within a seal. If its stopper is facing upward, this is not a seal within a seal. And if he bends the wineskin's bottleneck inward and ties the sack and seals it, this is also considered a seal within a seal. So if you could picture this like a canteen in a sack, but the canteen, the opening to the canteen is easily accessible through the opening of the sack. So you're reaching in, and the opening is right there. So even though it's within another bag, it's essentially like the bag's not there. But if it's upside down in the bag, then that's an extra, it's harder to get to, and that's a seal within a seal. Okay, so go a little bit longer. So now a slight tangent. The sages taught. At first, the sages would say that wine from the Samaritan city of Ain Kushi is prohibited due to the concern that it might have come into contact with the idolatrous inhabitants of Birat Sarika. And similarly, the wine of Barkata is prohibited due to the idolatrous inhabitants of the village of Parshai. And the wine of Zagdor is prohibited due to the village of Shalem. Subsequently, they retracted and began saying open barrels are prohibited, but sealed barrels are permitted. So, first of all, Samaritans. Samaritans are people who maintain Torah practices, but don't follow the ways of the rabbis. So they're not Karaites. They are ancient. They are an ancient people. They're still around today that still do Passover, but they slaughter lambs. They don't have kashrut the way we have kashrut. They have our Bible, but they have a Samaritan version of our Bible. So some of the words are different in a Samaritan Bible than ours. So there's always a question as to whether you can trust a Samaritan or not. So when it comes to wine, they're saying, no, you shouldn't trust Samaritan wine because they might have easy kind of relationship with the idolatrous inhabitants of a next town. And that's
Do Samaritans consider themselves Jewish?
So Samaritans do not consider themselves Jewish, and Jews certainly don't consider Samaritans Jewish.
Are there like...
There's still a group of Samaritans today in the land of Israel outside of the city of Nablus. And I remember when I was in Israel for my year of college that we took a trip before Passover to that Samaritan city to watch the Passover, to watch this ceremony of the priests of the Samaritan city performing the slaughter of the lamb.
Do they have like congregations here in Maryland?
No. It's only Israel based. Only based in Israel. There's no other Samaritan community. There are Karaites around, and Karaites are different. They have their own traditions that they don't accept rabbinic Judaism, and their practices are based on the Torah, and so there have been debates over the centuries as to whether Karaites are considered Jewish or not. And Maimonides counted them as Jewish. So as for all intents and purposes, Karaites are Jewish, but so we have a member of our congregation who, they're an Egyptian couple. There's a large Karaite community from Egypt that immigrated, and there's a Karaite community here in DC. There's a Karaite community in Israel, and this couple in our congregation, the husband is an Ashkenazi Egyptian Jew who married a Karaite Egyptian Jew. But she, for all intents and purposes, just follows our practices today. But it's just interesting when members of the family have passed, and I've been involved with the funeral service, we've incorporated a couple of Karaite prayers into the service. Yeah. So Karaites are more considered Jewish. And just a second here. Okay. My computer, hopefully this will go away. Okay. Okay. So the question now is about wine from a community that looks Jewish but isn't necessarily Jewish. But it's 10:19, so let's stop here. Just a second, my computers just keep on coming up with a dialog box. And okay, well, we'll stop here for today. So next week we should be able to have class, and that's the 21st, but the 28th, no class because it's a Sunday during Passover. The holiday then resumes for the seventh day of Passover that evening. So the service in the morning at Minyan is a little bit longer too. So we will not have class on the 28th, but we should be able to have class next week. There's a model Seder going on with the religious school, but I don't think I have to be at all of it. So we should be okay. So have a good rest of the day, everybody. Enjoy the good weather today. Take care, everybody.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, Jonah.
Thank you.
Thank you.